Something that you see mentioned in the Bible ever so often are names of lost books. This can be so interesting to wonder about and to research. But I hear you asking, Eric, I thought we talked about the Apocrypha and the Gnostic Gospels earlier. And you're right, those aren't the books we're talking about today. These books are actually gone forever, or at least most of them are. We'll look at them today on this 315 Faith Extra. There are 22 books, give or take, mentioned in the Bible, not to mention all the other letters and other random writings. Not the Apocrypha or stuff like that. These are books that people knew about. These are books that people read and they referenced as if it was common knowledge that apparently are just not around anymore. Okay, on the screen right now is a list of the books that the Bible mentions or tells us to look at that are lost forever. A few have pseudepigraphal, fake copies that claim to be the original versions, but none of these books listed have the original versions. Now keep in mind, none of them were intended to be part of the canon of the Bible. This isn't as if Paul quoted from Luke and we somehow lost Luke to history and to time. Nope. This is the humans which God used to record his word, referencing literary works that the people of the time would have recognized, they would have known about, they would have been familiar with. As it were, these books were popular, but not as popular or sufficiently preserved as Scripture. And how do I know that? Well, because we don't have any of those books anymore, and we have a lot of the Bible. Let's look at a few of these and where they're mentioned in the Bible. Book of the Wars of the Lord. In Numbers, we see this. Therefore, it is said in the book of the Wars of the Lord, Wahib and Supah, and the valleys of the Arnon, and the slope of the valleys that extends to the seat of Ar, and leans to the border of Moab. Certain sources believe that this is to be found in the drawing of text of several Old Testament books. There are no authoritative sources for that, though. The Book of Yazer. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the Book of Yazer? This was in Joshua, and it was also referenced in Samuel. I love how the Bible does this, and it does it all the time. Well, isn't this written in such and such? Or, as I know you know all about in this book over here. Well, no, I don't know it because I don't have that book. But I'd love to read some of these. It would have been awesome to have them. In this particular case, the Book of Yazer, and I'm sure I'm messing up that name, was probably a collection or a compilation of ancient Hebrew songs and poems and praises of heroes of Israel and their exploits in battle. Joshua included passages from the book, not because it was his only source of what occurred, but rather he was stating in effect, if you don't believe what I'm saying right now, go and read it in this other book. Go read it in the Book of Yazer. Even that book has this event recorded. He was using it as evidence to support his claim. You can find, however, books that claim to be the lost Book of Yazer. These have proven to be forgeries, though. You'll see on YouTube, you'll see on the internet, ooh, the Book of Yazer. This is it. Unfortunately, it's not. Sadly, in the end, this book is gone. The one mentioned in the Bible, we don't have. All we really know about it is found in those two scriptures where they mention that apparently it was a pretty cool book that had a lot of neat stuff in it. Manner of the Kingdom. We see this in 1 Samuel. Then Samuel told the people the rights and duties of the kinship, and he wrote them in a book and laid it up before the Lord. Then Samuel sent all the people away, each one to his home. Well, shoot. That would be really cool. I'd like to have that book. I'd like to read that book. Acts of Solomon. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon and all that he did and his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the Acts of Solomon? Well, thanks for that, First Kings. I bet they were. I would have loved to read those, but I don't have them. Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Now this is obviously in Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings. You see this mentioned several times. And the rest of the acts of Jeroboam, how he warred and how he reigned, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Man alive. There's a chronicle, a huge book of all the different things the kings of Israel did. How crazy would that be to read? That would be awesome. And again, I love how the Bible just assumes we have this, and we just know this, and we've got it. Wonderful. Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. Now we get this out of Kings as well. Now the rest of the acts of Rehoboam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? I bet they were. Book of the Kings of Israel. Now we get this out of Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, mainly just 2nd Chronicles. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoshaphat, from the first to last, are written in the Chronicles of Jehu, the sons of Hanani, which are recorded in the book of the Kings of Israel. Now this is mentioned on many occasions throughout, and under the expanded name of Books of the Kings of Judah and Israel. Again, all these books about all these kings and all that they did. Man, it would just be fun. I can only imagine the movies you could make out of some of the stuff these folks did. Okay, let's go on to the next. Annals of King David. We see this in 1st Chronicles. Joab, the son of Jeruah, began to count, but did not finish. Yet wrath came upon Israel for this, and the number was not entered in the Chronicles of King David. Chronicles of King David. Can you imagine what all was written on David? Now, if you got people singing in the streets on how you've killed tens of thousands, whether true or false, there must have been wild stories about David. That would have been a good read. Book of Nathan the prophet, Book of Gad the seer. Now the acts of King David, from the first to last, are written in the Chronicles of Samuel the seer, and the Chronicles of Nathan the prophet, and in the Chronicles of Gad the seer. In this case, it appears as though these 3 books are all written by real prophets, bringing up interesting questions. One apologist has a hypothesis that perhaps these 3 separate books were at one point composed into our contemporary Book of Samuel. This is plausible, but there's no way to confirm this. Basically, what they're saying here is, yeah, there were 3 books of accounts of David and different things that happened. And these did exist, but at some point they kind of got all absorbed into the Book of Samuel, which would be neat to think that's what happened, but there's no way to confirm it. It's just a guess. It's just a hypothesis. Now, there's the history of Nathan the prophet, the visions of Iddo the seer, the story of the prophets, the book of Shemaiah the prophet, the book of Jehu, the story of the book of the kings, the acts of Uriah. There are all these different books. There are many writings that have a passing reference or a mention here or there in Scripture. Just because the Bible references another book does not mean that that book is inspired. It just means that the author wanted to use it as an example or a reference. The exception, of course, is when the Bible references another book within itself. Some of the books reference other books, right? The above mentioned books were never considered inspired scripture, they were considered useful and educational and good reference history. Nevertheless, these books are not lost books of the Bible. They are just simply books that are lost.